Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near and listening to Jesus. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So Jesus told them this parable. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am, dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field. And when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
To your hearing, what is the moment upon which this parable turns? Just one line, or one image. I will arise and go to my father. Yeah, the younger son came to himself. Yeah. It's a little bit of a trick question. There might be multiple answers. Or were others of you thinking of something else? Is there another moment? Gene?
Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son.
He falls on his. Am I just making that up? Does he fall on his knees? In my head, he falls on his knees and says these words to his father. And Matt.
Now his elder son was in the field. What about you?
Now his elder son was in the field. I think there's a kind of a hidden turning with. Well, we don't. Maybe we need one more sentence. You know, we want one more. I want one more sentence in the passage. But there is something with the older son where the older son says, "Your son," and then the father a little while later he says, "Your brother," and so maybe there's a turn where he's saying, "No, the family is remade, son, with you, with your brother."
I was going to say, if I finally found it, your brother, or the son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.
The son of yours was dead, but is alive again. Yes. So if these are the turning moments in this passage, then what might you say, in one word, is this parable about? Redemption, forgiveness, reconciliation, transformation, reconciliation, grace, love. There's a pull between us. This is like the Fenway experience, or the Boston Garden, isn't it? My word was belonging. That each of these turnings has to do with what it means to belong. Okay, now, so is the parable of the lost son believable? Could it be possible that in the kingdom of God, belonging, reconciliation, transformation, love comes first? The Pharisees, they wanted good behavior to come first. They were really good at good behavior. But can it be possible that God is always choosing us? And that transformation begins not through our hard work in the field. Transformation begins not through us having finally figured out how to do life right, but that transformation begins really in the moment when we simply choose God in return. How many of you know of the sosobala?
What?
Yeah, okay, great. The sosobala. Yeah. I thought Aaron Jones might be my only possible one to know that. I was recently introduced to the sosobala by author Elliot Stein. Siriman Dokala Koyate sits on the Supreme Court of Guinea in West Africa. So by the authority of the law, he judges cases of the sort you might expect. It happened that one of these cases concerned two families who'd been fighting over land for generations. No judge before him had been able to resolve the conflict, and in the current setting, it seemed that may continue. During a pause in the court proceedings, Siriman Koyate changed out of his judge's robes and into his traditional clothing. He intended to approach this issue from another direction because Siriman Koyate is also the Bala Tegui. He is the current keeper of the Sosobala. And in this, he stands in an unbroken line that reaches back 800 years to the dawn of the Malian Empire. when Balafasike Koyate was given the care of the Sosobala and became chief counselor to the first king of the Malian Empire, Sundiata Kita. The Sosobala is a musical instrument. It is a bolophon. It's the bolophon upon which all others are based. You might say it looks like a xylophone. It has 20 wooden slats that are, and underneath them are hollow gourds which act as resonators, and the whole thing is bound together on a wooden frame with antelope hide. The Balatagui alone plays the Sosobala, a single person. And the Sosobala is kept incredibly in a mud hut in a remote village in the Guinean mountains. Every bolophon player in the many countries that were once the Malian Empire, is descended from Balafasike in this vast hereditary expression that combines the roles of counselor and bard and priest and matchmaker and historian. And a skilled Jile can recite, while playing the balophon, can recite grand epics of the whole empire and the defining local stories of their own village. A skilled Jile can do this for 3 days without repeating a thing. So to keep the Sosobala is to unite that entire tradition. Therefore, okay, I'm trying to cover an entire, world empire in 3 paragraphs, so I hope you kept up. Therefore, Siraman Koyate, now dressed in his traditional clothing as the Balatagui, he pulled aside the 2 fighting families and he said to them, I am the direct descendant of Balafasike. If you too claim to be descendants of King Sundiata, you will end this conflict right here. In his words, they both wept like babies, and that was the end of it. Does that sound like the son falling on his knees? Or what? The law, the judge's robes, are prescription, and they are recompense, and they are getting behavior right. But for an entrenched brokenness, Siraman Koyate set that way aside in favor of another. Because the Sosobala is belonging. Probably, those 2 families still had a lot of hard work to do. Just like the parable of the lost son ends with probably a lot of hard work still left to do. But transformation began for those 2 Guinean families by recalling that fundamentally they belonged to each other. Even if it was hundreds of years past. I really like the rule of law. I think it's a good part of making community. But good behavior is a trap if we think that is what comes first. We make up the rules for our good behavior. And sometimes we play tricks with them so that they work for us. Or sometimes the trick is simply that we focus so much on the rules about good behavior that we never have to look our neighbor right in the face. We can avoid these traps by remembering that in the kingdom of God, belonging comes first. That's why Jesus welcomed sinners and ate with them. Because belonging came first with Jesus. That's why we practice open communion at St. Andrew's. All who desire are welcome at this table. That's why we will baptize an infant who does not know their left hand from their right, let alone the Nicene Creed. Because belonging comes first. That's why we staffed our nursery before there were any babies here. And it's why we just added an accessible ramp and accessible seating in our worship space before we had any parishioners who were in a wheelchair or a cast. It's why the Diocese of New Hampshire passed a resolution committing ourselves to racial reparations. It's why this week we made food and we gave time and we gave our building to 3 families without homes before they were on their feet. Because in the kingdom of God, belonging comes first. Like all of those who listen to the balafon and in it remember their kinship, we listen week by week, day by day. We listen in Holy Week to who God is with us and whose we are, that we are God's children. So that hopefully one day when we are called to remember that belonging and live out of that belonging and be brave out of that belonging, be reconciled or transformed to show love because of that belonging, that we will be prepared to weep openly, to fall on our knees, to turn, and to belong again. There may still be all kinds of work to do after that remembrance. But transformation begins when we individually come to ourselves, when we mutually embrace, and then maybe in what was happening between the father and the older son, when we let the community know, we're at it again. The belonging has returned. That free choice is at the heart of Christianity. It's at the heart of our relationship with God and neighbor, because God is always choosing us. And we may choose God.